The message came in while I was finalizing a threat analysis memo for the Justice Department. I didn't know it yet, but that moment would change how my family saw me forever. My name is Olivia Grant. I'm 33, unmarried. No kids, no chaotic family portraits hanging on the living room wall. And because of that, I've always been the one quietly left out of the holiday table. This Easter was no different. It was the Wednesday before the holiday. I had just submitted my final report to the Bureau's Counterintelligence Division when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Sweetheart, your father and I think we're going to keep things simple this Easter. Just Emma, her husband, and the kids. You're always working, so we figured you'd understand." I was sitting in a silent conference room on the 9th floor of the Hoover Building, staring at a satellite map of a dark web marketplace selling stolen hospital data. It's simple. That's what they called a house full of toddlers with sticky hands and zero volume control. And me, the daughter who never missed a single Easter, who brought the desserts, paid for the spiral ham, and always showed up on time. Apparently, I was too disruptive, too busy. I didn't text back right away. Instead, I clicked open another file. A side-channel communication log, evidence that a group of Eastern European actors were preparing to extort vulnerable clinics across 3 states. We were 48 hours from intercept. I was leading the digital trace. But of course, my mother didn't know that. Because in the family narrative, I'm just the sister with no +1 who never posts anything fun. I leaned back in my chair, but I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I felt numb. You get used to invisibility, to keeping your work sealed behind clearance walls, to nodding politely when your aunt says, "I still don't understand what it is you do," to the silence that follows when your siblings talk about their toddlers, dance recitals, and you don't have a story that fits. And Marcus understood. We'd been quietly together for over a year. He was one of the senior field agents, brilliant, methodical, good with his hands. We met during a data breach briefing. We've survived encrypted black sites and snowed-in stakeouts, but we couldn't post pictures, couldn't say, "I love you" out loud during debriefings. He was the only one who ever asked how I was doing without expecting me to bring a pie. Just as I reached for my coffee, a new message popped up on the secure bureau channel. Sunday National Recognition Ceremony, live-streamed, director in attendance. And for the first time in my life, my name wouldn't just sit on a forgotten group text. It would be read on national television. And my whole family. They'd be watching. Some families make you feel celebrated. Mine made me feel optional until I stopped asking for a seat at their table. I remember last Easter like a bruise that never quite faded. Emma had brought her twins, sticky-fingered, sugar-charged, and somehow that chaos was deemed family warmth. I had brought hand-painted baskets for the kids, individual cards for everyone, and even paid for catering when Mom was overwhelmed. But when it came time for the family photo, "Liv, could you take the picture for us?" No one meant harm. That's the dangerous part. It wasn't cruelty. It was erasure wrapped in polite smiles, and you understand, right? I always said yes. Until this year. That night, after Mom's text, I sat across from Marcus in a quiet corner booth at a diner in Arlington. He had just come back from a field op in Berlin. His face was still marked by jet lag, but his eyes sharp as ever. "They uninvited you again," he said flatly, stirring his coffee. I nodded. Said it was about peace and quiet, just Emma and her zoo. "You know," he said, setting his mug down, You spend your life protecting this country, and they still think you're the outsider. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was just the kind of person who didn't sugarcoat truth. You deserve to be seen live. Not just by the director, by the people who keep forgetting who you are. That hit me harder than it should have, because the truth was I had started to believe them. That maybe I really was the outlier. That being focused on purpose meant forfeiting belonging. Marcus reached across the table, squeezed my hand, a rare moment of softness in lives built on protocol and clearance levels. They'll see you soon enough. 2 days later, the email came in. You've been selected for public commendation. National broadcast. Please arrive Sunday 8:00 a.m. Formal attire. I stared at the screen. It didn't say the case. Didn't say why. But I knew. The ransomware ring, the one targeting vulnerable hospitals, had fallen, and the department wanted a face for that quiet victory. Apparently, I was it. As I pressed confirm attendance, my phone buzzed again. Emma, you're still welcome to swing by after church. The kids keep asking about you. I looked at her message, then opened my closet, and began planning what I'd wear to the Justice Department ceremony, the one airing during Easter brunch. This year, I wouldn't be dropping by. I'd be broadcast. I didn't dress to impress. I dressed to remember who I was before they tried to shrink me, and that morning I didn't ask for space. I took it. Easter Sunday. While most of the country shuffled into pews and polished off cinnamon rolls, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the lapel of a crisp black blazer. No lace, no pastels, just power. I ran a hand over the name tag, Grant O. Bureau Intelligence Unit. The room was quiet except for the hum of CNN playing in the background. Marcus stood behind me, straightening his own tie. You're going to be brilliant, he said, voice low. They won't know what hit them. I smiled faintly. They never did. Outside the venue, security was tight. Uniforms, badges, dogs trained to sniff not for bombs, but for secrets. Inside, it felt like something out of a dream. Polished wood, rows of flags, and the sound of a string quartet echoing through the marble. I kept thinking about how my mother once said, you should have gone into something more visible, like medicine or teaching. Visible, today I would be. 9:11 a.m. As the audience settled, the Bureau's assistant director took the podium. His voice boomed. In the past year, countless lives were saved from cyber extortion attacks. Today, we recognize those who operated in silence to protect our most vulnerable systems, our hospitals, our clinics, our people. I sat motionless, then I heard it. Special commendation. Olivia Grant, lead analyst, Federal Bureau of Investigation. A pause. For operational excellence, discretion, and service above self. I rose. The heels of my shoes echoed through the hall as I walked to the stage. My heart pounded, but not from nerves. It was something else. It was vindication. The director of the FBI extended his hand. You kept the lights on in places where life depended on it. Thank you for your service. A camera clicked. Flash. Applause. Somewhere in suburban Pennsylvania, at my parents' house, a flat-screen TV lit up the living room with my image, standing tall beside the nation's top law enforcement leader. Emma's husband holding a paper plate of deviled eggs, frozen mid-bite, my dad fumbling with the remote, my mom's hand over her mouth, whispering, That's our Olivia. Emma, wait, that's today, is this live? Aunt Carol. Did she say FBI? Why didn't anyone tell us? Back on stage, I turned to leave. As I stepped down, Marcus was waiting at the bottom of the steps. He didn't smile, didn't say a word, just gently placed his hand on the small of my back. The quiet, solid kind of love that doesn't ask for attention, only presence. I had never felt more seen in my entire life, not because of the cameras, but because I stopped waiting for permission to exist in their world. The applause faded, but my phone didn't. Funny how fast people remember you. Once the world puts a spotlight where they used to place silence. By the time I reached the black SUV outside the venue, my phone had exploded. 37 unread messages, 4 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and, just to make things poetic, a message from the family group chat titled Easter Feast. The most recent text was from my mom. "Olivia, why didn't you tell us? We would have watched from the start." Right. Like how I told them I once ran point on a sting operation in Prague, and they said, "That sounds intense. Did you remember to renew your car insurance?" Another ping. "Emma, OMG Liv. Are you seriously on TV right now, FBI? Since when? My father, princess. This is big, we're all watching, you looked so poised. So proud of you. Uncle Dean, next year you can host Easter. We'll all come to you, Agent Grant." I didn't respond. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Because I suddenly realized I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I just didn't need them to clap for me after the world did. The silence they gave me all those years, that had shaped me far more than their sudden applause ever could. As the car pulled away, I watched the city blur past through tinted windows. And somewhere between the Jefferson Memorial and the Key Bridge, a memory surfaced. Flashback, Olivia, age 24. Sitting at the kids' table during Easter, not because there were no adult seats, but because no one moved over to make space. She had spent the morning picking up pastries and flowers for the party. No one thanked her. She had offered to lead grace. Mom said, "Let's have someone married do it this year." She smiled, stayed quiet, took pictures for everyone. Not one included her. Back in the present, Marcus broke the silence. "You okay?" I turned toward him. Sunlight flickered across his collar. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think I finally am." I powered off my phone, not out of anger, out of peace. I'd waited years for someone to say, "We're proud of you." But the truth was, the moment I stopped waiting for that was the moment I became someone I could be proud of. Dinner that night wasn't celebratory, it was quiet, intentional, the kind of peace you only earn. Marcus and I sat by the window of a small bistro tucked behind the Washington Monument. No reservations, no fuss, just 2 people who had lived too long behind locked doors, finally breathing air that didn't demand clearance. I ordered red wine. He didn't ask if I wanted to talk about it. That was the best thing about him. He never needed the headline, just the truth. We ate slowly. No phones, no updates. No, did you see what they said? Just forks on porcelain and the hum of jazz. When we stepped back into the evening air, the sky had turned the color of burnt gold. The city felt like it was exhaling. I turned my phone on again, not because I wanted to, because I was ready. There were still messages, some from extended family I hadn't heard from in years. "Cousin Rachel, I always knew you were doing something big. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner." "Aunt Denise." I showed the clip to everyone at the salon. "You looked so confident. You've grown into such a remarkable woman." But one message stood out. A voicemail from my mother. I hesitated, then pressed play. Her voice was soft. Not the tone she used when she was dismissing. The one she used when she was afraid of losing something. "Hi, sweetheart. It's Mom. I watched the ceremony. Your father and I both did, and I had no idea. I didn't know you'd been doing all that. I didn't know how much you carried or how quiet you've had to be. A pause, a breath. You looked so strong, not just in your suit or with those men in uniform, but in your eyes. I saw it. The woman you've become, the one I didn't take time to understand. Another pause. I'm sorry for the assumptions, for the way we've made you feel like you weren't part of things, when really you've been holding everything together in ways we couldn't see. I know it's late, I know we've missed moments, but if there's still a seat at your table, we'd love to be there. She didn't say, "Call me back." She didn't cry, but she meant it. And I stood there, phone pressed to my chest, eyes burning, not because I was broken, because I had healed far enough to hear it without needing it. Marcus watched me from the curb. He didn't ask. Instead, he opened the car door like always and said, "Ready to go home?" I nodded, yes, but not their home. He smiled, "Yours then." Exactly. Revenge was never the point. Recognition wasn't either. It was about reclaiming space I had always earned, but never demanded. Not with volume, with presence. And this time, if I set the table, it'll be on my terms, not for approval, but for peace. It took me 2 days to respond. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to mean every word. I sat in my apartment, the morning light spilling across the floor like forgiveness. No suit, no protocol. Just me in a sweatshirt and socks, holding a mug of coffee I actually had time to finish. I scrolled back through the messages, not to revisit the praise, but to remind myself how long silence had lived between us. How many holidays I had shown up with pies and presents and still left feeling like a guest. How many times I had been asked to take the photo, never to be in it, and then I opened a blank message to the family thread. Not long. Not bitter, just this. Next year, Easter's on me, but the guest list will be different. Not everyone who shares a last name deserves a seat. Some seats will go to people who have stood beside me quietly for years. If that's hard to hear, consider why. Love. Olivia. I hit send, muted the thread, set the phone down. Then I did something small but revolutionary. I took out my grandmother's old recipe book, the one she'd left to me because I was the one who never asked for anything. I bookmarked a lemon tart, a rosemary lamb, and a line she'd scribbled in pencil beside a stew. Make this for people who don't make you question your worth. I smiled and wrote out a new list, not of ingredients, of people. Marcus, Maya from work who brought me soup when I got sick on assignment. Ethan, the neighbor who checked my mail when I disappeared for weeks without explanation. 3 friends from Quantico who still called me, G, like it was a badge of honor. My analyst team, who'd followed me into digital fires with no credit and no question. That would be my table. No performative smiles, no keeping score, just people who understood that silence wasn't absence. It was sacrifice. Later that week, Marcus asked me if I was nervous. About setting boundaries, about letting go of certain ties. I shook my head. You can only set the table so many times for people who never bring a chair. This Easter, I won't be carving ham in someone else's kitchen. I'll be toasting with people who know my middle name, not just my obligations. There won't be pastel napkins or staged family photos, but there will be peace, and lemon tart, and laughter that doesn't come with qualifiers, and that is more than I ever thought I was allowed to have. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, you no longer get to decide what I belong to. And sometimes, you say nothing at all, you just live well, and let them feel the absence of what they once ignored.